Hi, Misha here, and felt like talking about a new acquisition from Hobbymaster. This is a 1/72 scale die-cast model of a Grumman, later Northrop Grumman, EA-6B Prowler. And I've already kind of shown you a Prowler before, and actually recently did a video talking about electronic warfare aircraft, Wild Weasels. In that one I showed you actually what was the first edition of the Prowler, and it was set up with 3 ECM pods and 2 fuel tanks. This model here can be configured that way. It does come with those attachments. Sorry, just moving something out of my way. But it also comes with 2 missiles to kind of show you the other purpose of this aircraft. These are AGM-88 HARM, high-speed anti-radiation missiles, because this could be used as an attack aircraft. And this is from 2009 U.S. Navy, the Gray Wolves. So it's a little bit different than the other model, and I just really felt like picking it up. It's a really neat aircraft. Feature-wise, it does have a few different antennae and instrumentation from the other one, but the main difference is that it does have the missiles as optional ordnance. And I like how they do these because you can have this center-line ECM pod and still have it on the stand. I like the stand too because it has the metal stem here and it has the wide base. It has gear up or down, and it has opening canopy with 4 crew members you can have in or out. Sometimes these would fly with a total of 3 crew, sometimes 4. This kind of depends. The Prowler here was really one of the first, if not the very first, custom-built electronic warfare aircraft. Before it, you had the EA-6A, which was a modified intruder, A6, and 25 of those would be done for primarily the Marine Corps in the 1960s. But that was a stopgap. You just had the crew of 2. In 1966, Grumman was awarded a contract to develop a dedicated electronic warfare aircraft, and the first prototype would fly in 1968, and the first one would be delivered to the U.S. Navy at the beginning of '71. It would first go on board carriers that summer, and in 1972, 2 squadrons would be sent to Vietnam. This is not a small aircraft, especially considering it operated off carriers. It's just under 60 feet long, with a 53-foot wingspan. It's jet-powered, but it is subsonic. It has a maximum speed of about 650 miles per hour, although it likes to cruise at about 480 to 500. Has a maximum altitude of a bit under 38,000 feet. But its real qualities lie in its endurance. It can hold up to 5 external fuel tanks, although typically it only carries 2, if that, and it can lift 18,000 pounds. Now initially, this was just in fuel tanks and ECM pods. The first versions of the EA-6B did not carry missiles. Actually, it wasn't until the 3rd major upgrade program in 1980 that they were given the ability to first carry the Shrike missile and then soon the AGM-88 HARM. And these would be quite the success. Grumman, later Northrop Grumman, would produce and then support these, with the last of the new aircraft coming off the production line in 1991. They would build a total of 170 being flown by the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps. In addition to Vietnam, where they kind of had their first action, they would be used in 1983, Grenada, 1986, Libya, and of course, 39 would be used in 1991 during Operation Desert Storm, the Gulf War. They would continue to see use throughout the 90s, and actually in 1998 they became even more important when the Air Force retired the EF-111A Aardvark, or excuse me, you know what I mean, a Sparkbark, the Raven, meaning this was kind of the only dedicated electronic warfare aircraft left, although of course the Air Force would fly F-16s, reworked for that role. So when the War on Terror began in 2001, 2002, there were still about 124 in U.S. Navy and in U.S. Marine Corps service, and these would often operate jointly with Air Force assets and would be a critical part of operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is kind of where this model is from here. Now the upgrades kind of stopped. There was another major program set up for the 90s that never really went anywhere, and kind of the final upgrade program would be in 2010, at which point these were getting quite long in the tooth, and its successor was finally selected. That would be the EF-18G Growler, which I've done a video on. The first Growlers appeared in 2009, but through various mishaps and reasons, they really weren't fully operationally ready until 2011 and weren't available in numbers for the Navy until later than that, meaning that the EA-6B Prowler had an extended life. So older aircraft were continued to be flown, refurbished, and repaired, and these were pretty intensive to keep flying in the 21st century, partly based on the old technology and partly just based on the design itself. So in the Navy, they would continue to fly, having their last cruise on a carrier in 2014, and then there was an official retirement ceremony in 2015. But for the Marines, they were still in active service. In fact, in 2016, they made a major contribution in Syria. The Marines would finally retire their Prowlers in 2019, meaning that now they're recently fully out of service. And these were really only used by the U.S. military and really no one else. But yeah, this is one configuration. Typically, you would see a mix and match between missiles, ECM pods, and fuel tanks. And they would almost always carry an ECM pod on the center line hardpoint. They have a total of 5, 2 under each wing, 1 in the center. And you could have up to 5 fuel tanks or 5 ECM pods, or you could have up to 4 missiles. I don't believe the center line was ever cleared to carry a missile, but the wings could. But that's kind of an extremist. Typically, you would see 2 missiles and 2 ECM pods like you see here with the center line pod. But you could mix and match. You don't see a lot of missiles with fuel tanks, though. It just, depends on the mission and what it's up for. And because of its relatively low speed, it was quite fuel efficient for what it was. And as I said earlier, sometimes they would have a total of 4 crew. Sometimes they would reduce that to 3 and then just put ballast in the vacant seat just to make sure the ejection systems worked properly. But I've always been a fan of the A6 Intruder, so the EA-6B Prowler is just kind of right up my alley. And, well, externally, there aren't a bunch of changes between the generations. There are a few, again, with the patterning of antenna and what have you. But I mostly picked this one up just so I could have the missiles on board. It's typical Hobby Master quality, and this is a pretty substantial model. The wings and everything are metal. The tail is partially metal, partially plastic, and of course the ordnance are plastic. But I like these because it actually slots into the stand. It's a very secure, very wide base. While I can be critical of some of the Hobbymaster stands with the Prowler, they pretty much nailed it, and I really don't have any major complaints with this this model, this tooling. They've done a few different styles by now, but since there was just the kind of one low rate but continuous production run from the early 70s through 1991, the planes really didn't change a whole lot. So you're basically just looking at Navy or Marine Corps markings and, 80s, 90s, 2000s service. And I know they can carry, or at least purportedly they could carry the Shrike back in the day, but I don't know how often that was actually employed in combat. And again, today, this is replaced by the pretty cool EF-18G Growler. Again, something I have done a video on. So what do you think? I don't know. These are just cool to me. And for more, like I said, I did recently do a video on wild weasels, so check that out if you are interested. With that, this is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.